unless you really do the work, you're not going to be able to fulfill your purpose. Most of us have an 8-year-old that are running our lives. Marriage and committed relationships are an exquisite opportunity to work shit out.
Welcome, everyone, to the True You podcast. I'm here with my partner, Bill Tierney.
Hi, everybody.
And we have a special guest today, Nick Meima.
Hello, Bill. Hello, Marty.
Hi, Nick. Welcome.
Welcome, Nick.
Excited to be here.
Nick is a friend of ours. He's part of a circle of coaches. We call ourselves the Coaching Excellence Team. And so we've known Nick for a while, and we wanted to have him as a guest. He has a different specialty. Nick is a divorce coach, a couples coach, and a life coach. So he's got a specialty in this area of intimacy and the breaking down of intimacy and the making of intimacy. And I think we're going to have a great conversation today around what you've discovered in your work about how people tap into their true self. I'd like to start out by asking you about that journey for yourself. I know that you've had quite a career. You've done co-housing, you've done counseling, you've done a lot of different things. So maybe if you could just introduce us like with a 3-minute bio and tell us how that's led you to see who you are truly. And then we'll go from there.
Okay. 3 minutes. Let me see what I can do with that.
No timer. There's no timer. Just take the time you need.
So when I was 17, my paternal grandmother developed what we probably now would call Alzheimer's. We then called it senile dementia. She stayed with my mother, father, and my sister and I for a couple of weeks, I think about a month. And one of us had to be watching her at all times. And so when she left to go stay with my aunts, at 17, I was tired. And I thought, I knew enough to know that at 17, I had a lot of energy. And then my question became, could this have been prevented? So when I got to my undergrad, I focused on, whenever I could, on anything that related to aging and wrote papers on aging. And then when I graduated, I wanted to pursue a master's in gerontology, which is study of aging. And there was no program in the country at the time that offered that. So then I pursued a passion and interest of mine, which is a master's program in marriage, family, and child counseling. Mm-hmm. And just as I was completing that, the first program in the country at University of Southern California offered a master's in gerontology. So I was in the first class of that school and got my master's in gerontology, and then was offered a CEO role of a really large retirement community.
So I'm going to interrupt just for a second. It's because I think it's interesting that it says something about you that this whole career kickoff came from an experience with your grandmother and the needs of the aged.
And so I had a unique experience where there's a lot of people on the street that I lived in. It was a quiet street, but there were a lot of older people. And so they were a lot of them were distant relatives. And so I would visit with them, and I'd shovel snow, rake leaves, do odd jobs starting at age 12. Mm-hmm. And really got to spend a lot of time. And both my sets of grandparents, paternal and maternal, celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary together. Mm-hmm. So I had an opportunity to spend a fair amount of time with older people, more than probably most people of my age. So it was just a sense of calling, if you will, that I pursued. And then when I landed the role of CEO of that large retirement community at age 24, I had not been well prepared by the management company to take that role on, but they really wanted that piece of paper, that diploma on the wall. Mm-hmm. And I was the only person in the country that was in the administrative track to do that. So I did that for 16 years, and it was very demanding, in some ways very fulfilling. And after 16 years, I said, I am done. I have done everything I know how to do. and I left. And I started a nonprofit.
Now, at that point, was that question, how were you relating to that original question? Could this have been prevented at that point?
At that point, I was in a broader question, which is how could I, initially, when I came to that facility, this is a university town. And so there were a lot of faculty, alum, and staff. And I thought, wow, this is phenomenal. So I tried to organize a seminar series. They had so many people and so much accumulated knowledge. Let's quickly goes back for one split second. And the first day back at the master's program, there were 50 of us that started, 18 graduated. It's really challenging. Somebody said that the reason that they were in the program was because there was so much wisdom with older people that was going untapped. And I'm laughing a little bit because there was a part of me, it was that version of me that said to that person, how many older people do you know? Meaning that I had a lot of experience with older people, even at that age, and many of them did not have a lot of it. And that was partly education, intelligence, desire to keep learning. I did arrive at that facility with the idea this could be a wonderful opportunity for everybody. And I was met with, we're retired. So nobody ever did anything along those lines. And it was disappointing to me. Some nights I'd be working late and I'd be walking to the facility and I walk down the hallway and I'm hearing out of both sides as I'm walking down, what Jeopardy or Wheel of Fortune, I can't remember which.
It sounds like,
and here it's really how that's what they're doing. And then my job just came to offer the best services I possibly could in the retirement, in the apartments, in the nursing home part, because I had to give up that possibility and just do the best I could to make this the most successful community I could. And by the time I left, it did win awards and it was one of the best in the country. Gratified to be able to say. I facetiously say I got my PhD in psychology in that role. There's a staff of 350 people and over 400 people live there. And so it was very challenging.
I want to interrupt just to get your wisdom from having gone through these experiences. Like what are you at that age learning about the true human being and yourself in particular?
If I said I lived to 80, if I lived to 80 and I didn't have wisdom or capacity for that,
right,
then I wanted to be generative, even in my age years. That became clear to me that even though I wasn't seeing it from them, and I didn't see it particularly from my parents or my in-laws, I wanted that for me and really have a sense of a spiritual leaning. That my belief is that we're here for a purpose, and that doesn't end at age 65.
It sounds like, Nick, you might have been wondering by then, where did this myth of wisdom with our elders come from? Because it sounds like you hadn't seen any of it.
I had not seen a lot of it. Correct. That was disappointing, and it still is disappointing because I still hear people talking about it. And truly, my understanding is about 80% of the population has never gone to college, and a lot of people are approaching age 65 with very limited resources financially. The majority, as I understand it, it's a situation where I think most people are not in the place where they're approaching their later years with wisdom. In my experience, yes.
We interrupted your introduction, your bio, but notice that we're both just really interested and curious about some things, just even given what we've learned so far. For example, I guess I want to hear the rest of the story. Does this story turn out well? Did you finally find a group of people or some aspects of what predictable indicators will point towards a group of people that are going to end up in wisdom in their elder years?
Yeah. I had just one slight interval, which was 5 years, in which I had two daughters, both of which were going into or in college. So I had to continue to generate an income. So for 5 years, I created a home health agency with a good friend of mine and then sold it to him after 5 years. And that's when I went into, after a divorce, went into a real passion, which was co-housing. Co-housing is an intergenerational community of people who buy a condominium. The whole thing, the whole design of the the whole design of the project is based on how does form follows function. Function wanted to be, how do we keep people connected most easily? And for example, parking is out on the perimeter and you walk in. There's a building called the Common House. That's where you pick up your mail. A couple times a week, there's a shared meal. And then all the meetings, unlike the typical condominium, every adult in the community is part of the board. And so the decisions are made in a consensus decision making, which can be really challenging. So I really, while I was with the retirement center, I found out about this book that was called Cohousing, a Contemporary Approach to Housing Ourselves. This is back in the 80s. And I was so drawn by the concept. And so why I'm referencing that in context of your last question, Bill, is that this is multi-generational. Co-housing is there are some co-housing projects that are only seniors, but most are multi-generational. And it was such a gift to have older people. I was in my 40s to 50s while I was there. And then, of course, kids. And having the opportunity for people of all ages to relate. And one of the things that was compelling about it for me is that how older people would have the opportunity that they normally would not have in their typical neighborhood to interact with kids in a lot of different ways. And that was generative for both of them.
Right.
Whether it was reading a book or doing some tutoring, whatever it was. And one of the profound things that happened while I was there were two older women that had terminal cancer. And with both of them, about a year apart, just coincidentally, we were able to do a celebration of life while they were alive and be able to tell them why they're alive, what we appreciated and valued. That was profound for everybody there, everybody. And so there are many things about it. I was able to then, with a couple of partners, create two other co-housing communities. It's the only place in the world, to my knowledge, that there's 3 co-housing communities on the same street. And they have gone on over the years to create an integral connection between all 3 communities. So now there's 120 units, condo units with a lot of, these people are, again, multi-generational and committed to making a difference. So one of the significant things that I valued about co-housing, in addition to what I've already said, was an environmental sensitivity. So the facilities, every building was really energy efficient, one lawnmower, and just in all the different ways that we could support the environment, minimize impact. So that was, so for me, this was a real sense of, I knew that was for me to do. And I really was passionate about it. And the unique thing about co-housing is that you have to sell the units before they're built, which means you got to be able to convey the concept in a compelling way that people would be willing to pay. And I was fortunately, that was my job for all 3 communities, and then facilitate all the meetings using the consensus model. And I'm delighted to say that my youngest daughter attended virtually all of the meetings in the first project that I did. And she went on to, she's now a really successful coach because she was inspired because there'd be this conflict and it would get resolved. And so it's really gratifying. I just talked to her last night and she's enormously successful as a coach with organizations.
So what was it again? I want to, I hope you don't mind my interrupting again, but I'm interested in, there's something about that, what you were called to do there, that again tells us something about the true you. So there, first we had the
aging.
Right, exactly. And now all of these, there are a lot of things that stimulated you about this, the bringing people together from different generations, the environmental awareness. There's a lot of things that tell us something about the true you here too.
Conflict mediation, probably the consensus. I've been involved in a consensus group.
Right.
Very challenging.
And I omitted to say, because it was implicit, is my strong sense of desire to catalyze or participate in community, which when I first started into co-housing, there was a book that was titled Bowling Alone, Bowling, Bowling Alone. And even back then, the notion of the disconnection that so many people have, separate, we don't know our neighbors, and we're living in a very limited silo, if you will. And then, of course, in my opinion, it's gotten more and more, and research supports this, more and more fragmented with COVID, and now with these little devices called cell phones and laptops. So much happens without a interpersonal connection between people in real time. So I'm still very interested in catalyzing whenever I can.
Yeah, and maybe that plays into now this chapter of your life that's about marriages. Because the common theme so far is connection, people being connected.
Right. So 08 happened, and that was when the economy collapsed, and it was really profound in Michigan, where I was living. And my stepdaughter and oldest daughter were living together in Boulder, Colorado. And my wife and I said, okay, it seems like if we're going to move and start over, this would be a really good time to do that. And I'm not going to dwell on it, but one of the things I've been trained in is designing and officiating ceremonies. And so when I first came to Colorado for the first year and a half, I did about 100 weddings that I designed and officiated. That was meeting with the couple and then designing a ceremony uniquely for them. And if you've never done a wedding ceremony outdoors, and most of them were outdoors, it's really challenging because there's always something happening outdoors, and being able to adapt to that. I found that I love that. I just love the challenge of it. And it got to be really competent. That wasn't going to be my career, but it was something that I could at least land and start doing right away. And then there was a real true sense of calling to do divorce work, but also because of my background working with couples. And on my business card for couples, it says bending or ending. And mending is repairing. And most of the couples that I get to see are beyond that. Their relationship has fragmented so much so that there really is a lot of conflict. And then the question becomes, is this couple capable and motivated to together reshape and redefine the relationship? And the answer is most people no. But it's still what I work with when I work on it. And sometimes it's a no, then how can we, with integrity and as much care and concern, end it? So that's, in simple terms, what I do with couples. And then individual life coaching, and then the divorce part. Now, the divorce part for me takes up, I have a 10-week program, which is a classroom format, not a educational, but it's therapeutic in the sense that it really helps people move through emotions, but it also gives them lots of tools to enable them to move on with their lives in a much more informed way than they were when they started the 10-week program. And most people end their marriages, either one person decides it's over and then they feel somewhat guilty about it, and then the other person who's didn't decide to leave it feels rejected. So there's blame going on either direction, and how they navigate that. And so most people don't, I would say 75 to 80% people going through divorce don't do any therapy, don't do any program, and end up going into the next chapter of their lives, oftentimes with a lot of resentment, a lot of bitterness, and for most people, not a clear sense of what they contributed to the relationship not being sustainable.
Right.
So that's my goal, is if you're going to go through a divorce, what can you learn from it?
And just so that the listeners know, we're going to give you the information about how to get in touch with Nick at the end if this is something that you would like to learn more about from him.
So one of the interesting things for me, beyond, I've probably had about 1,000 students now in that program over the last 15 years, but I've also done individual coaching work with CEOs, business owners, and some celebrities. And the reason I'm mentioning that is because both of you are business owners, and there's many business owners who are also married, and their partners are also in the business with them. And that often creates a lot of what is the marriage really? Is it the business? Are we really husband and wife and heterosexual? And oftentimes, no, we're business partners. And then when the end of the marriage happens, it often can really be the end of the business. And so how do I support that couple or the individual, whoever it is? And so or the CEO, I've had CEOs of publicly traded companies, and the word about their divorce can't get out too soon, because if it does, word gets out, and then they start looking a little more closely. How is he or she going to handle this divorce? And is it going to impact their performance? Is it going to impact? And sometimes it does if they don't get the kind of support they really need. So I have a special program. It's a 3-month program for CEOs or, business owners, or even celebrities. I've had a couple of them where at the beginning, almost every single day, I'm spending time with them to help them. Because at the beginning, they're sometimes completely thrown by this whole experience. And if I can get them to do in the first week 2 hours of constructive work, that's better than they were doing when they met me. And at the end of the second week, we're up to 3 or 4. And then by the end of typically a month, they're much more able to engage in a very effective way for, let's say, 7 or 8 hours. And so I stay with them for typically 3 months to keep supporting them to gain their emotional footing as they navigate through that. I hate
to interrupt, but I really want to start, and maybe I should, let you finish the story first, but I want to start. You've talked about many different kinds of work you've done, and I want to start to draw out, like, what have you learned from all this that we could pass on to our listeners? Because you're a very wise man, having gone through all of this. And so I want to start to get into what you have to convey to us about what the true to be one's true self is, having been working in gerontology and co-housing and now relationships and also business. What do people need to learn? What can we learn from all that?
Okay, I'm just gathering my thoughts. So what occurs to me first is that to be in a couple relationship without some initial support is, for many people, creates a dynamic that is ill-fated.
I see.
So my strong suggestion is, if you are going to get married, and you don't need to be married to have a committed relationship, I'm talking about legal now.
Right.
But even if you're going to be in a committed relationship, not legal, getting premarital support, because in my opinion, there's tools that a couple can get that would be really helpful in particular techniques and whatever, communication, conflict resolution. How do when we're under-resourced, how do we deal with that? Further,
my dad was a minister, a Protestant minister, and before he would marry a couple, they had to do a brief, here's what to expect out of marriage and what to be prepared for when, there are tough times. And he was very insistent on that. There were a number of times when people would come to him and say, oh, we don't need that. We just want to get married. Just marry us. That's your job.
Right.
And my dad would not do it. He's like, because he said the same thing. It will be ill-fated.
Right.
I probably would have only been married once if I had gone through that. I'm at my 3rd marriage now.
So yeah, it's profound. And then whenever there's a first child, 60% of marriages become very, I would say, dysregulated as a result. And then when there's a second child, 80% of marriages become dysregulated as a result of that. And they never really have the tools or the perspective. Like, it's not a big surprise that your relationship is going to change dramatically when you have a kid. You have a second, it's exponential, right? And so being prepared for that, most people never are adequately, like, having the mindset for how do we build and maintain this relationship together even when we have a child.
Yeah.
Let me jump in if I could, Nick. I'm the second oldest of 7. And my earliest memories are some tender, sweet spot moments. But then with numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, it got increasingly dysfunctional and challenging for my parents. And they showed up less and less competent as
Yes.
we went on.
Yeah.
They could have used some help.
Yeah. So so it's another thing is having the opportunity, and there's various ways to get support for that.
Hearing this is really helpful. I mean, I assume that people don't get this kind of help because they think they don't, it would be like that they shouldn't need it somehow. And just to hear from somebody with your experience, like, no, this is something everybody ought to have. That's got to be
Right.
very, I would imagine, very reassuring. And your experience, Bill, just amplifies that.
So I'm 22 years old at the time of my first marriage, and I'd already been waiting for 3 years to marry this woman who had to go through high school first. So she graduated from high school, and I can't get her married quickly enough because I'm so insecure, so insecure. And had someone said, let's just say that she had said, I want to marry you, and I want to talk to somebody. I want this to go. Can we meet with somebody and get some support and counseling? I would have been pissed, terrified, really nervous about it, and probably a real tough customer, really difficult to coach, probably at that point. Do you run across that often?
Absolutely. Yeah. Most people, one or both, are reluctant. This again goes back to a couple key things that when we say to this other person, I love you, talking about at the beginning, early on in the relationship, they're not really saying I love you to the real person. They're saying I love you to the fantasy or the illusion of that person.
Oh.
And then coupled with that, when they actually, quote, tie the knot, unconsciously, they're handing the little girl or little boy in the heterosexual couple to each other unconsciously and say, you take care of her, you take care of him. Of course, we can't do that. And then that moment arrives when he is, what? That's not the guy. But then women more than men tend to say, but I can change him. And so it's a journey that's fraught with insanity, right?
Right.
Insanity, my definition is insanity is not being in reality, right? And so disillusionment is when the fantasy of who we thought they were, who we fell in love, who we created, disillusionment is one of the most painful things that a human being can experience. That's my reality and from what I've learned. So that's another thing, is to really be as prepared and get as much support.
I love this. Yeah. I mean, I was in a committed relationship from about 22, 24, somewhere in there. I don't know the exact. I'd have to stop and figure it out, to in my mid 30s. And when I look back on myself in that relationship, I didn't know jack about how to, I would be so much better at it now than I was then. I think everybody could probably say that. We've gone through a lot more. We've been in a lot of other kinds of relationships. We learn how to communicate and who we really are. You're talking about the illusion. Like, he's not the same person. I'm not the same person either. And so I think this is really important. So what it implies is that if a relationship is going to last, that the partners need to be ready to change inside of the relationship, and not to expect that, who we were when we were both 22 is going to be who we are when we're 88.
So what I talk about is the relationship as the third thing. There's he or she, a heterosexual couple, and the relationship. But people talk about our relationship, but they don't. It's just an abstract concept. And just to use, for example, the book, The 5 Love Languages, a lot of people know about that book. The 5 love languages are gifts, acts of service, quality time, words of affirmation, and
Touch.
blanket touch, physical touch. And so the way the book is written and the way most people interpret it is this: I will give you flowers and I expect something in return.
Exactly.
So it's very transactional. It's giving in order to get. In other words, it's very manipulative.
Yes.
And so the way I work with people is the relationship needs you to give that, whatever it is, whatever the active the language is,
Yeah.
or the relationship with no expectation of anything in return. In other words, generative for the relationship. So the relationship becomes held by both of them as a living organism, if you will. And so that's how I approach it, because it's otherwise we're just in a constant manipulation game. And you always, neither one of you have ever said that.
No, I've never said that. I always avoid it.
So does that relate back to co-housing? That there's a commitment there to community that is not reducible to the transaction between any one of us, any two of us, but
Right.
there's something we're all committed to living in this community together, and it's not just a lawnmower.
There's your next book, Marty. It's not just a lot.
So let me, there's something that I wanted to tie back to, which is about getting together. And so now we're going into, one person's going into a second marriage, maybe both, or at least one is, they have children. So somebody is going to become a step parent, and sometimes both of them are becoming. Almost nobody. I'm saying, again, let's use the 80-20 rule. 80% of people never get any kind of psychological or relational counseling to how to prepare them to be a step parent.
Yeah.
And is it okay to swear a little bit?
Oh, hell yeah.
Becoming a step parent is one of the most fucking difficult things anybody can contemplate doing.
Yes.
And the second marriages have a higher divorce rate than first. First is 50 and the seconds are in the 60s.
Yeah.
And I believe firmly that's one of the major reasons is that they're not prepared to deal with it. And so if I'm going back to the question, what counsel would I offer people? If you're going to get in relationship with somebody who has kids, if you have they do, get support.
Can you at least hint at what does one need to learn to become a step parent? What is that? What's the key to that?
The ability to, it takes a significant degree of emotional maturity, in my opinion, because it's the art of transcending frustration. There's going to be these kids, her kids, his kids, whoever, they didn't say, Mom, Dad, would you marry somebody that they're a step parent? And that's part A. And most of the time they're not. It's not unusual for there to be resentment. We were fine, just the 3-4 of us, Mom or Dad, whatever. And now we're supposed to be happy to have, and he or she has kids too. It's a humongous adjustment for everybody. And then you deal with, let's say, early teens through teens, which is a tough year transition period for any parent. And that's a step parent. And so if they're going to be individuating and be rebellious, it's a really easy target for the step parent to be targeted. And so it takes an enormous amount of maturity to not take it personally and to understand that this is just the way it works. And it said that the average period of time to really blend is about 7 years.
So I guess that step parent would have to do a lot of just staying in it. I know you hate me right now, but I'm still committed to you, even though you're resisting me. I'm still going to be here for you.
I would say that the vast majority of people are not capable of that. They don't have the support to do it. Immaturity is something that you gain over time, right? And so that means reflection and learning and growing. And it's sad. I don't like saying that, but that's my reality. And it's tragic because then it's another breakup and the kids are yet I'm talking about the kids now, not the adults. It's a big deal for them too, but for the kids that yet affected by another breakup, it really has a big effect on them. So that's my strong advice for people who are contemplating going into. Now, one other thing is that when we are contemplating getting married, there's a big difference between emotional attachment and love.
Mm-hmm.
And most people do get emotionally attached one way or another to their partner. But in my opinion, a lot of people construe that to be love. And I hear many people who are going through divorce say, I still love him. I still love her. When we drill down and find, no, you're still emotionally attached to. And it has a lot of meaning. I'm not negating that, but it isn't the same as. So that's what I really urge people to come to an understanding. What really is love for them? And most people don't really have a good, easy definition for that. And further, most people don't love themselves, in my experience. Most people live inside of, I'm not enough. The belief I'm not enough, I'm inadequate. And so it's such a profound thing that a lot of spiritual, psychological, and philosophy teachers have talked about. If you can't give what you don't have. Mm-hmm. And so if I don't love me, is it possible to love? Yes, it is possible. You can love your pets, you love these little kids. But to really love this other person, marriage and committed relationship are an exquisite opportunity to work shit out.
Hey,
that's not fun. It's like sandpaper on your skin, right? And not having an awareness that this is going to be challenging every single day is, it was the first month or first year, nirvana. And so my business, there's a rule that says nothing competes with new sex. So it's like a drug. When I can't talk to you, talk to me when they're past that, because I can't even talk to you. But I'd like to talk to you before then if we possibly could.
If I could, I'm really struck hearing the whole story and all of the different things that you've done at the source of love that you are for the geriatric community, for communities coming together to live together, for couples. You've been giving a lot of love your whole life. Where does that come from?
I'm tempted to make a joke out of it, but I'm not. I was going to say drugs, but no. I honestly think that we each of us come in with a purpose,
mm-hmm.
and I think it's always been something inside of me that when I was a kid, I used to work for people, and through high school, college, did that, and then
wasn't the sex. You weren't having sex with all these people that you've been helping.
The simple answer was no.
Let's stick with that.
I have to say I'm a monogamous person. I know I have no science, but it's polyamory.
What I hear you say is it feels like you were born to do, like you came into the world and this is your purpose, like what you were meant to do.
Yeah, I've had, whether it was with the aging or the cohousing or now what I'm doing, there really has been a real sense of calling. That's how I would.
Yeah, that's a good word.
And just to be clear, Nick, what is it you're now doing? Are you working with people that are divorcing?
I now spend half of my time with people who are divorcing.
Yep.
About 20% of my time with couples who are in some phase, and the remainder of time with individual life coaching.
I see. What would you say with those individuals that you're supporting with life coaching? What's your approach? How do you help them?
I always start with what I have learned to be a core issue, that everybody has some core negative beliefs about themselves and about life. And those core negative beliefs inform them in a negative way about life. And so I always start there. Okay, what are your core negative beliefs? And the simplest ones are, and this goes back typically to childhood, like in the first couple of years, where our parents don't meet all of our needs. And we make it that it's because of us, not them. And so there's something wrong with me. I'm not lovable. and then we can add in, I don't have value, I'm not effective. And then people create a persona or a bunch of them, a sub-personality, hoping that will win love and approval. So I start there because of my experiences. If I don't, I've been in the field for a long time. And my experience in therapy, a lot of therapy is putting Band-Aids on symptoms. I'm very interested in not doing that. I'm very interested in, okay, if we can get you clear about who you really are, it's enough in simple terms, lovable in simple terms. If we start moving in that direction, now we can get some traction. And so whether it's working for somebody's going through a divorce and they have a lot of grief, a lot of anger, a lot of resentment, a lot of guilt, a whole lot of things. But if I can help them start at the very beginning, you have these core beliefs and they have these maladaptive adulthood, maladaptive behaviors that correspond to these negative beliefs. And they always lead to conflict and dissension and unfulfillment of needs. So that's where I start.
Yeah.
And then build off of that.
How do you help them? What do you do with, so now you've identified their negative beliefs. Then what do you do?
So then we get into what would be the reality of the situation, meaning that you are enough. I have this, you can imagine a 3-inch glass, 3-inch big glass diamond, if you will. It has all these facets. And so I hold up this diamond inside of my hand, and so that you can see some of the facets through the gaps of my fingers. This is you in what I call the prison cell of not enoughness, where some of the real you can show out to the world. And then I talk about the foundation of enoughness, where we actually belong. And then I hold the diamond up facing out with all the different facets. And so you're going to, I'm talking to them now, you're going to discover so many things about yourself that you did not and could not know before. And you are going to be fulfilled, and the world is going to benefit from this new reality. I'm responding, Bill. So maybe there's a follow-up question I'm getting. So those are core.
The guest a couple of weeks ago, I'm sorry, this is a total interruption, but she talked about her muchness.
Muchness. I like it. I like it.
Right?
You're talking about Susan Campbell?
No, the young woman who does all the medicine work. Yeah.
Yes.
And she wasn't, her diamond was totally sending arcs in all directions. She was right to recognize she's way over her not enoughness. She was into her muchness.
Yeah, that's right. Marissa Skolosky.
Marissa, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, Bill, that's an initial stepping in clear question.
Great. Yeah. Thank you.
And I know that each of you have your own way of working with people around these same kind of issues. You, Bill, with IFS, and you, Marty, with your background. And so, in my opinion, this is the core issue. And so, it's sometimes referred to as the wounded child that we develop in the first 5 years, and then the adaptive child, and this is simplistic, I know, that is protecting the wounded child. And that's where almost all of the maladaptive behaviors, because the adaptive child is not even 8 years old, or maximum 8 years old, where we're pre-conscious. We're not aware of all the conclusions that we're creating.
Yeah.
And most of us have an 8-year-old that are running our lives.
Yeah. Often I'll say to a client, once we discover that that's the case, that they're actually reacting to their spouse as the 8-year-old version of themselves, I'll say something like, now, next time you run into marriage problems, I want you to go out and find the nearest 8-year-old and ask for some advice.
That's a high five, Bill. Absolutely.
It's crazy when you look at it that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
But if you don't know that's what's happening, if you don't, I can feel it. I'm thinking of my first and second marriages. I could feel a little 8-year-old in me that was reacting and had its feelings hurt and was pouting for not getting his way. And I could feel that. And then the maladaptive, as you say, strategy was then to pretend and hide and gaslight and act like I wasn't responding that way. Act like a child, acting like an adult.
I think there's an 8-year-old running the business side of my business.
No. We might have an 8-year-old running the country too.
Take a deep breath.
Oh gosh.
Several of them maybe.
Yes, yes.
But it's funny and light as it is to say that, I think it's also very enlightening or informative. Like, wow, I remember when I first was introduced to inner child work,
hmm
which was by Jeff, a fourth person in our group for the audience. I did a weekend, an inner child discovery weekend. And when I first started to notice, like, oh, wow, that 60-year-old woman is behaving like she's 6. Oh, look at that 25-year-old man. He's acting like he's 2. I mean, it's very interesting to start to notice that we're not acting our age a lot of the time.
That's right.
So much of there's both the drama triangle that got created in, I think, late 60s, early 70s. And there's a victim, persecutor, rescuer in different roles.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all drama. And we pay at the theater to see people professionally acting roles. And we're sitting there, oh, what's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? What's going to happen now? And people are so compelled by seeing this drama playing out in front of them, but there's always somebody's fault, right? And so that's where the victim comes in. And then usually I imagine it like a teeter-totter. I call you a name, and now you're upset, and you're gonna call me, or we're gonna do something, and so we're back and forth. This is drama. This is how most people live their entire lives, and it's tragic because no real needs get fulfilled.
Yeah,
and we keep doing it because that's all we know to do. And so I think that's core to all of our work, is how to help people come to the reality of you deserve to stand on this solid foundation. I'm enough. I'm a beautiful person. I'm a gem. And if there's a spiritual belief that gets added in there.
That's the Karpman drama triangle that you're referring to. And we'll put a link in notes about that. That was constructed in 1968. And since then, there's a really good book, nice allegory book called The Power of Ted, The Empowerment Dynamic, and it includes that triangle. Nick, we need to begin to wrap up. What would you like our listeners to know and understand as we say goodbye here?
That unless you really do the work, you're not going to be able to fulfill your purpose.
And does everybody have work to do?
Everybody has work to do until their last breath.
Mm-hmm. And what is the work? What does the work need to be focused on to be able to realize your purpose?
To clear out all the self-limiting beliefs that I'm never going to be able to, I'm not enough, all those things. And once you start clearing that away, then what emerges is what's possible. To imagine that I would really love to do this, but I can't. No, I would really love to do it, and I am going to.
But if you have those self-limiting beliefs, then you'll never be able to get past that. Yeah.
Right.
And the work of being human till the day we die, you're saying, is clearing.
Right. And often, like it's not unusual for clients, and I don't do the trauma work, but they have some profound things happen in their lives that are blocking their energy flow psychically, physically, in combination. And so that needs to be dealt with too, or not too, but to underscore it. And it's tragic how many people have had trauma and how they're not getting the support they need, and they're stuck inside of the pain of that. Mm-hmm. And then so much of I think it's Gabor Mate that says every single addiction is a tragic attempt to deal with pain.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever our pain is, whatever we can do to get support in moving, healing. I don't necessarily like the word healing. I think transforming fits for me best. So yeah.
Yeah, I like reintegration.
Reintegration.
Yeah.
Very good.
Stepping back into who we are. Gabor Mate also, I believe, said that the opposite of addiction is connection. He wasn't the only one that said that, but I heard it from him the first time. Right. Really good stuff.
Yes.
I want to ask you real quickly, what is your daughter working in the private or public sector, the coach?
Private.
Okay. And if somebody wanted to get a hold of you to work with you, how would they do so? And who would you like to hear from?
So I have a number of websites. I have supporting and counseling couples.com. That's for couples work, obviously. And then rebuilders, plural REBUILDERS, plural rebuilders.net. And there's an enormous amount of information about all the programs we offer for folks going through divorces, and a huge amount of testimonials. It's the only program, by the way, that offers a money back guarantee.
Mhm.
If you enroll in the program and after working through the program, if you're not satisfied, we'll give you your money back. Fortunately, that's not something we had to do. I think one time, somebody who actually didn't do the work, but was such a cantankerous person, we said,
Yeah.
do that. And then
The takeaway there is be cantankerous and you might get your money back.
oh, no, not think of that. I did not think of that. And then there's CEO divorce coach. Just the way, one word, CEO divorce coach. That's for people who are in professional roles that are they're leaders and need support.
Got it. This will all be in show notes. Nick, you've been a fabulous guest. I've learned a ton from you. I'm really glad on a personal level that we were able to get you on the show, because I've learned a lot about you and gotten a sense from this conversation that we haven't been able to get in the coaching excellence team, just because of the structure and the limitations that we have there. This has been fabulous. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks.
Delighted to hang with both of you. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome.
A pleasure.
Take
Until
care,
next-
guys.
Thanks, listeners. We appreciate who you are, that you would be listening to this podcast, and want to acknowledge all those parts of you that yearn for the experience of the true you.
If you like this episode, click like, share it with others, and be sure to subscribe. Listen again next week for the newest episode.
Check show notes for a transcript and a link to resources, including a link to let us know if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast.
Thank you for listening and going on this journey with us back to the true you.